The arrival? In the year 2045, the sky above Earth darkened as a massive alien fleet approached. The ships were like nothing anyone had seen before. They glimmered with strange colors, casting shadows over the cities below. Panic spread through the streets of New York City, where people stared up in disbelief. What were these things? Were they friends or foes? Across the world, news outlets broadcast live footage of the fleet's approach. Scientists and military leaders scrambled to understand what was happening. In a small apartment in Brooklyn, a young woman named Sarah watched the news with her heart racing. She had always dreamed of exploring space, but this was not what she had imagined. "Mom, Dad," Sarah shouted, her voice shaking. "Come quick. There are aliens in the sky." Her parents rushed into the living room. They stood frozen, their eyes wide as they saw the enormous ships on the screen. "This can't be happening," her father murmured. "We need to get to safety." Meanwhile, at military bases across the globe, commanders gathered to discuss the situation. General Thompson, a seasoned leader known for his calm demeanor, addressed his troops. "We do not yet know their intentions. We must prepare for the worst. Get the fighter jets in the air and have all defense systems ready." As the military scrambled to respond, the aliens sent a message to Earth. The voice was deep and resonant, echoing across frequencies. "People of Earth, we are the Kalteri. We come in peace. Surrender now, and we will spare your lives." The message sparked outrage and fear. "Surrender? Never," shouted a soldier during a press briefing. "We will fight to protect our home." As the hours passed, fear transformed into resolve. Ordinary citizens banded together, ready to defend their planet. Sarah's father, a former soldier, organized a neighborhood meeting in their building. "We need to stay calm and work together. If they attack, we must be ready," he said. The gathering was filled with worry, but also determination. People shared ideas on how to protect their families. They set up watch groups and created plans to evacuate if needed. Sarah felt a mix of fear and excitement. She wanted to help, but she didn't know how. Back at the alien ships, the Kalteri commander, Silara, watched Earth's reactions with keen interest. "They are scared, but they are also brave," she noted, turning to her second-in-command. "We thought they would surrender easily, but their spirit is strong. This could be more challenging than we anticipated." Silara had spent years studying Earth and its people. She knew they were capable of great violence, but also immense creativity. "Prepare our forces for an initial strike," she ordered. "Let us show them our power." As night fell, the first attacks began. Bright lights flashed in the sky as the Kalteri unleashed their weapons. In the streets below, chaos erupted. Sirens blared as people ran in all directions, searching for shelter. Sarah and her family huddled in the living room, listening to the sounds of destruction outside. The walls shook with every explosion. "What do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "Stay here and keep quiet," her mother replied, her eyes filled with fear. "We'll be safe if we stick together." But safety felt far away as the attacks continued. Military jets soared overhead, trying to fight back against the alien forces. Explosions lit up the sky like fireworks, but they were anything but celebratory. In the heart of the city, a group of teenagers gathered in a park. They had come to watch the spectacle, but soon realized the seriousness of the situation. "We need to do something," one boy named Jake said. "We can't just stand here." "Yeah, but what can we do?" another girl replied, fear creeping into her voice. Jake's eyes narrowed with determination. "We have to help the military. They need all the support they can get." As the battle raged on, the Kalteri fleet faced unexpected resistance. The humans were fighting back with a fierce spirit. They were not the weak species the Kalteri had assumed. Silara realized that this was not just a battle of weapons, but a battle of wills. "Send in the ground troops," she commanded. "We will crush their spirit and claim this planet." But even as she spoke, doubt began to creep into her mind. The humans were fighting for their home, and they were willing to do anything to protect it. Back on the ground, Sarah felt a spark of courage. She couldn't just hide anymore. "I want to help," she declared to her parents. They exchanged worried glances, but knew they could not hold her back. "Just be careful," her father said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "If you want to help, find others who are organizing the defense. We'll stay together." With that, Sarah left her apartment, stepping into the chaos of the streets. Around her, people were organizing, directing traffic, and helping those who had been injured. She could feel the energy of determination in the air. As the Kalteri prepared for their next strike, the people of Earth were ready to stand their ground. The battle for the planet had just begun, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. In the shadows of the darkening sky, the Kalteri would soon learn that underestimating humanity was their biggest mistake. Underestimating humanity. The night sky was lit with flashes of bright colors as the battle continued. The sounds of explosions echoed through the streets, drowning out the cries of fear and confusion. In the heart of New York City, the once bustling streets were now filled with debris and chaos. Buildings trembled under the force of the alien attacks, while jets zipped through the air, trying to fend off the invaders. Sarah joined a group of people gathered in a local community center, where makeshift plans were being formed. A former military officer named Captain Hughes was leading the meeting, his face serious but determined. "We may be outmatched in firepower," he said, "but we have something they don't: the will to fight for our home." The room buzzed with energy as people shared ideas and strategies. Some suggested forming neighborhood watch groups, while others proposed ways to communicate with the military. Sarah felt a sense of belonging among these brave souls, all united in the face of a common threat. Meanwhile, in the alien fleet, Commander Xylera observed the chaos from her command ship. She was frustrated by the human response. "Why do they resist so fiercely?" she demanded, turning to her second-in-command, Zekur. "We outnumber them and possess superior technology." Zekur shook his head, confusion etched on his face. "They seem to fight with a passion we did not expect. Their spirit is strong, and they are finding ways to counter our attacks." Xylera considered his words. She had studied humanity for years, but their courage surprised her. She had assumed they would cower and submit. "Perhaps we need a different approach," she mused. "If we cannot break their will, we must find a way to instill fear." As dawn approached, the first light of day revealed the extent of the damage across the city. Fires burned, smoke filled the air, and the streets were littered with debris. But among the destruction, a new sense of unity was forming. Groups of volunteers gathered to help each other, offering food, water, and first aid to those in need. Sarah found herself at the community center again, where Captain Hughes was discussing plans to support the military. "We need to coordinate with the National Guard and any available resources," he said. "They might be able to provide us with supplies and training." The people in the room nodded, inspired by Hughes' leadership. Sarah raised her hand hesitantly. "What can we do to help?" she asked. "I want to do more than just watch." Hughes smiled, appreciating her eagerness. "Every little bit helps, Sarah. If you can, spread the word and encourage others to join us. We need all hands on deck." With a new sense of purpose, Sarah volunteered to help coordinate the efforts. She reached out to friends and neighbors, urging them to come to the center and lend a hand. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the community center became a hub of activity. Elsewhere, the military was scrambling to regroup. General Thompson surveyed the battlefield from his command post. Frustrated by the lack of progress against the Kalteri forces, "We need to strike back harder," he declared. "We cannot allow them to believe we will fold under pressure." He turned to his officers. "Prepare the jets for a counterattack. We need to show them we will not back down." As the jets took to the sky, the Kalteri ships hovered above, surveying the damage below. Xylera knew they had to act quickly before humanity could fully mobilize. "Send in the ground troops to secure key locations," she ordered. "We need to show them our power and crush any hope they have of resistance." As the Kalteri ground troops descended upon the city, Sarah and the volunteers were ready. Armed with makeshift weapons and supplies gathered from the community, they prepared to defend their homes. The determination in their hearts fueled their resolve. When the Kalteri soldiers landed, they were met with unexpected resistance. Humans armed with whatever they could find, bats, pipes, and even fire extinguishers, stood ready to fight. "We are not afraid," Sarah shouted, rallying her friends. "We will protect our home." The Kalteri soldiers were taken aback. They had expected fear and submission, not fierce resistance. "These humans are unlike any we have faced before," one alien soldier muttered, hesitating as the humans charged forward. The first clash began. Humans fought with sheer will and ingenuity. They used their knowledge of the city to their advantage, setting traps and ambushes. The Kalteri, trained for combat on their home planet, struggled to adapt to the chaotic urban environment. Celera watched from her ship, anger rising within her. "This is not how it was supposed to be," she yelled, slamming her fist on the control panel. "We cannot allow these creatures to resist us. We must take control now." The tide of the battle shifted as more humans joined the fight. Families and friends united, standing shoulder to shoulder against the alien invaders. News spread like wildfire, inspiring more people to take up arms and defend their planet. Despite their advanced technology, the Kalteri realized they had underestimated humanity's spirit. Each alien soldier who fell increased the resolve of the humans. They fought not just for survival, but for their families, their homes, and their freedom. As the day wore on, the humans' tenacity began to frustrate the Kalteri troops. They were no longer just facing a weak species. They were battling a united front fueled by determination. The aliens were beginning to realize that this was not going to be an easy conquest. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the battlefield, both sides prepared for the next phase of the conflict. The Kalteri were determined to crush this uprising, but the humans were equally determined to protect their home. In that moment, it became clear this battle was just beginning, and humanity would not back down easily. The Kalteri had made a grave mistake by underestimating humanity, and now they would have to face the consequences. The turning point. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the battered streets of New York City. The remnants of the day's battle lay strewn about, broken vehicles, fallen debris, and the echo of defiance in the air. Both sides prepared for a night that would test their limits. In the community center, Sarah and her fellow volunteers worked tirelessly. The atmosphere was tense, but there was an undeniable sense of purpose. "We need to gather as much information as we can about the enemy," Captain Hughes urged, his voice steady and commanding. "Understanding their tactics is crucial if we want to outsmart them." Sarah nodded, her heart pounding with determination. "We could set up lookout posts," she suggested. "If we know where the Kalteri are moving, we can prepare ambushes." The room filled with murmurs of agreement as volunteers sprang into action, organizing teams and assigning roles. Sarah joined a group tasked with scouting the outskirts of the city, armed with flashlights and walkie-talkies. As night fell, the streets took on an eerie silence, broken only by distant sounds of the Kalteri forces regrouping. Sarah led her team cautiously through the shadows, every sound sending a chill down her spine. "Stay close," she whispered, keeping her voice low. "We need to avoid detection." They moved through alleyways and back streets, relying on the familiar layout of their home. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the night. The group froze, hearts racing. "What was that?" one of her teammates asked, eyes wide with fear. "Let's check it out," Sarah replied, adrenaline pumping through her veins. They approached the source of the noise, peering around a corner. A Kalteri patrol was moving through the area, their glowing weapons illuminating the darkness. "We need to gather intel," she whispered urgently. As they crept closer, They overheard snippets of conversation. The humans are proving more resilient than expected, one alien soldier said, frustration evident in his voice. They are organizing and fighting back. Crush their spirit, another replied. We must show them that resistance is futile. Sarah's mind raced as she processed the information. They're struggling, she whispered to her team. We have a chance to turn this around. Suddenly, the patrol moved closer, and the humans quickly retreated, heart pounding as they dashed back through the shadows. We need to report this, one of her teammates said as they reached a safe distance. They're worried about us. Once back at the community center, Sarah relayed the information to Captain Hughes. They're underestimating us, she explained, excitement bubbling in her chest. We have a real opportunity here. Hughes nodded, his eyes glinting with determination. Then we need to capitalize on it. Let's rally more people and spread the word. If we can coordinate our efforts and work together, we might just have a chance to turn the tide. As word spread, more volunteers joined their cause. Families, friends, and neighbors united, each person contributing in their own way. Some gathered supplies, while others honed their combat skills. The community buzzed with newfound energy, and hope ignited in their hearts. Meanwhile, on the Kalteri command ship, Commander Xylera paced nervously. Their resistance is becoming more organized, she said, her frustration palpable. We must crush them before they gain any more strength. Perhaps a show of force will intimidate them, Zekor suggested. We can deploy our heavy artillery in the heart of the city. Xylera considered this, knowing that a display of power might quell the human spirit. Do it, she commanded. Let's remind them who they are up against. Back on the ground, as night deepened, the humans prepared for a counterattack. They decided to create diversions in various locations to draw the Kalteri troops away from their stronghold. Sarah took charge of coordinating the ambushes, her mind racing with ideas. We can use the old subway tunnels, she suggested. If we set off some fireworks and noise in one area, we can lure them away from the community center. Hughes agreed, and the plan was set in motion. Volunteers split into teams, each heading to their designated locations, armed with makeshift weapons and a fierce determination to protect their home. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The first team moved into position, setting off fireworks near a Kalteri patrol. Bright colors exploded in the night sky, drawing the aliens' attention. Let's go, Sarah shouted, rallying her team as they moved in behind the distraction. Chaos erupted as the Kalteri soldiers rushed toward the fireworks, leaving their posts unguarded. The humans seized the moment, charging forward with a newfound bravery. For Earth, Sarah yelled, her voice echoing through the night. They clashed with the Kalteri forces, and the element of surprise worked in their favor. The humans fought fiercely, employing guerrilla tactics learned from their scouting missions. They used the environment to their advantage, hiding behind debris and launching ambushes from unexpected angles. As the battle raged on, Xylera watched from her command ship, her frustration growing. Why can't we subdue them? She yelled at her officers. They're fighting back harder than we anticipated. Zekor turned to her, concern etched on his face. They are not just defending. They are fighting for something. Their spirit is unyielding. The fight continued into the early hours of the morning, and for the first time, the humans began to see the tide turning in their favor. They pushed the Kalteri back, gaining ground and confidence. Each victory fueled their determination, a fire igniting in their hearts. As dawn broke, casting a warm glow over the battlefield, the humans stood tall. They had proven to themselves and the Kalteri that they were not to be underestimated. The initial fear and chaos had transformed into courage and unity. For the first time in the conflict, humanity began to believe that they could win. The Kalteri, on the other hand, realized they were up against something they had never faced before, a determined species that would fight to the bitter end for their home. The turning point had come, and the battle for Earth was far from over. The reckoning. As the sun rose higher in the sky, the echoes of battle still reverberated through the streets of New York City. Smoke rose from smoldering wreckage, and the smell of charred metal lingered in the air. The humans, buoyed by their recent victories, gathered at the community center, sharing stories of courage and resilience. Sarah stood in front of the group, her heart pounding with excitement. "We did it," she shouted, raising her fist in the air. "We fought back, and we showed them that we will not be defeated. But this is only the beginning. We must keep pushing forward." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Sarah felt a wave of hope wash over her. But amid the celebration, she knew that the Kalteri would not back down easily. They had tasted defeat, and their pride would compel them to strike back harder than ever. Captain Hughes stepped forward, his expression serious. "We need to stay vigilant. The Kalteri will regroup and plan their next move. We must prepare for whatever comes next." "We can use the intel we gathered from the patrols," Sarah suggested. "If we can intercept their communications, we can learn their strategies and anticipate their attacks." "Good idea," Hughes replied, nodding. "We have to remain one step ahead. Let's form teams to monitor their movements and keep our lines of communication open. The enemy must never know our plans." As the day wore on, teams formed and set to work, creating makeshift surveillance systems and fortifying defenses. Sarah and her scouting group gathered in an abandoned building with a view of the streets. They set up a watch station, using binoculars to scan for Kalteri activity. Hours passed, and tensions ran high. Suddenly, one of the scouts pointed. "Look! Kalteri reinforcements." Sarah's heart raced as she focused her binoculars on the advancing troops. A large battalion of Kalteri soldiers marched through the streets, their numbers far greater than before. Panic surged within her, but she fought to maintain her composure. "We need to warn the others." "Let's go," another scout urged, and they sprinted back to the community center, shouting for everyone to gather. Hughes quickly called for a meeting, and the room fell silent as he outlined the situation. "We have Kalteri reinforcements on their way. They are not here to negotiate. They are here to destroy us. We need to fortify our defenses and prepare for an all-out assault." Fear flickered across some faces, but Sarah stepped forward, her voice strong. "We've faced them before, and we won. We have to stand together and fight. This is our home." The room erupted in applause, and a sense of unity enveloped the group. They quickly divided into teams, assigning roles for the impending defense. Some worked on barricades while others strategized ambushes. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a crimson glow over the city, the Kalteri forces drew closer. The humans were ready. They took their positions, armed with whatever weapons they could find: makeshift rifles, bows, and even tools repurposed for combat. As night fell, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. They could hear the distant sounds of Kalteri soldiers approaching. "Stay sharp," Hughes reminded everyone. "Do not underestimate them. We will fight for our survival." Suddenly, the night exploded with noise as the Kalteri launched their assault. The sound of blaster fire lit up the darkness, and the ground shook with the force of their advance. The humans stood their ground, firing back with all their might. "Now," Sarah shouted, signaling her team to execute their ambush plan. They sprang into action, attacking the Kalteri flank and surprising the aliens. The element of surprise worked in their favor as they fought back with unyielding courage. But the Kalteri were relentless. They pushed forward, determined to reclaim their dominance. The battle raged on, and the humans fought fiercely, but the overwhelming numbers began to take their toll. "Fall back," Hughes shouted as he assessed the situation. "We need to regroup." The humans pulled back to the community center, barricading the doors and preparing for the worst. The sound of the Kalteri pounding against the entrance sent shivers down their spines. In the midst of chaos, Sarah remained focused. "We can't give up," she yelled, rallying her fellow fighters. "We have to find a way to turn this around. Maybe we can trap them," one of her teammates suggested. If we can lure them into the streets, we can use the environment to our advantage. Great idea, Sarah exclaimed. Let's set traps and create distractions. We can use their own weapons against them. With renewed determination, the humans began to craft traps and set up barricades in the streets. They worked quickly and quietly, knowing time was not on their side. As the Kalteri continued to pound on the doors, the humans prepared for their counteroffensive. When the moment came, they unleashed their plan. A series of explosions rang out, distracting the Kalteri and drawing them into the streets. The humans sprang into action, launching their surprise attack from the rooftops and alleyways. Now, Sarah shouted, leading the charge. The Kalteri were caught off guard, and the humans fought with everything they had. The streets became a battleground as the tide of the fight shifted in their favor once again. In the chaos, Sarah spotted Commander Xilora among the Kalteri forces. Rage fueled her determination. She could not let the commander escape again. As she moved through the battlefield, dodging blasts and weaving between fighters, she focused on her target. But as she closed in, she noticed something unexpected. Xilora hesitated, confusion written across her alien features. The Kalteri were clearly struggling to adapt to the humans' resilience and unpredictability. This moment of uncertainty gave Sarah the chance she needed. "This ends now," she yelled, charging at Xilora with her weapon raised. But before she could strike, a powerful blast erupted nearby, knocking Sarah off her feet. The world spun around her, and she struggled to regain her balance. As she looked up, she saw the Kalteri regrouping, their forces rallying behind Xilora. "Fall back! Fall back!" Hughes shouted, realizing the Kalteri were gaining ground once more. The humans needed to regroup quickly or risk losing everything they had fought for. As they retreated, Sarah's heart sank. They had fought hard, but the Kalteri were formidable opponents. In that moment of chaos, she realized that the battle for Earth was far from over. With newfound determination, Sarah vowed to continue fighting. Together, they would stand against the Kalteri, no matter the odds. The reckoning was only beginning, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The counterattack. The sun rose slowly over New York City, illuminating the scars of the night's battle. Smoke still lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the fierce struggle between the humans and the Kalteri. Sarah woke up early, her heart heavy with the memories of the previous day's conflict. She felt a sense of urgency. They couldn't just sit and wait for the Kalteri to strike again. At the community center, people were gathering, their expressions a mix of determination and fear. Captain Hughes stood in front of them, looking resolute despite the fatigue etched on his face. "We took a beating last night," he began, his voice steady. "But we showed them that we are not weak. They are regrouping, and we need to be ready." Sarah stepped forward, her spirit ignited. "We need to take the fight to them. If we can catch them off guard again, we might turn the tide in our favor. We can't let them think they've won." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The spark of hope was reignited. They all knew they had to act quickly. Time was not on their side. "Let's gather intel on their positions," Hughes said, nodding at Sarah. "We need to understand what we're up against. If we can find a weak point in their defenses, we can exploit it." The group quickly split into teams, and Sarah led a small group towards the outskirts of the city where the Kalteri forces were believed to be stationed. The streets were eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous night. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine, but she pushed it aside. They had to be brave. As they moved stealthily through the ruins of abandoned buildings, Sarah kept her eyes peeled for any signs of Kalteri activity. The air was thick with tension, and every sound felt amplified. Suddenly, one of the scouts, Marcus, whispered urgently, "I see something." Sarah crouched down beside him, peering through the rubble. In the distance, she spotted a group of Kalteri soldiers, their distinctive armor glinting in the sunlight. They were focused, seemingly preparing for another assault. "We need to report this back to the others," Sarah said, her heart racing with excitement. "If we can see their positions, we might be able to devise a plan." The team quickly made their way back to the community center, where they relayed their findings to Hughes and the others. "There are at least a dozen Kalteri soldiers stationed just outside the city limits," Sarah explained, pointing to a map spread out on the table. "If we strike now, we can catch them by surprise." Hughes nodded, considering their options. "We'll need to create a diversion. If we can draw their attention elsewhere, we can take out their flanking positions and weaken their defenses. Then we can move in for the main attack." The group began to strategize, outlining their plans. Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie building among them. Everyone was eager to fight back, and ideas flowed freely. They decided to split into two teams, one to create the diversion, and the other to launch the main attack. As the sun began to set, the humans prepared for their counterattack. Sarah and her team gathered supplies, crafting makeshift explosives and gathering weapons. The excitement was palpable as they armed themselves, ready to face the Kalteri once more. "Stay sharp, everyone," Hughes warned as they moved towards their designated positions. "We need to stick to the plan. Trust each other, and we'll get through this." The diversion team set off first, creating noise and confusion in the opposite direction of the Kalteri troops. They set off small explosives and fired shots into the air, drawing the attention of the Kalteri. As predicted, the alien soldiers began to shift their focus, moving away from their stronghold. "Now's our chance," Sarah shouted to her team as they stealthily approached the Kalteri camp. They moved quietly, their hearts pounding in sync with the adrenaline coursing through their veins. As they neared the enemy's position, Sarah spotted a small cluster of Kalteri soldiers gathered around a communication device. "If we can take that out, they won't be able to call for reinforcements," she whispered. "On my mark," Sarah instructed. 3, 2, 1, now." The humans surged forward, launching their attack with precision. The element of surprise was on their side, and the Kalteri were caught off guard. Sarah and her team fought fiercely, determined to dismantle the alien presence in their city. The sound of blaster fire filled the air as chaos erupted in the Kalteri camp. The humans fought valiantly, using every tool at their disposal. They moved as one, striking quickly and retreating to regroup whenever necessary. "Let's take out that communication device," Sarah shouted, pointing to the cluster of Kalteri. They fought their way through the chaos, dodging blaster fire and ducking behind cover. Finally, they reached the device. "Cover me," Sarah yelled as she crouched down to disable it. She worked quickly, her fingers trembling but steady, and within moments she pulled the wires apart, rendering it useless. "Nice job," one of her teammates cheered, but their victory was short-lived as Kalteri reinforcements arrived, pouring into the area and pushing the humans back. "Fall back," Hughes ordered through the comms. "Regroup at the rendezvous point." With a mix of determination and fear, Sarah and her team pulled back, racing through the streets to escape the advancing Kalteri forces. They navigated the rubble and debris, adrenaline pushing them to move faster. When they finally reached the rendezvous point, they found other members of their team already there, some wounded but determined. "We fought well," Hughes said, his voice strong despite the chaos. "But we need to regroup and reevaluate our strategy. We can't let them gain the upper hand again." As they caught their breath and tended to their wounded, Sarah looked around at her friends and fellow fighters. She felt a renewed sense of purpose swelling within her. They had faced danger, fought back, and lived to tell the tale. The battle was far from over, but they had made progress. Together, they would continue to resist the Kalteri, fighting for their home and their future. They had proven that humanity was stronger than any alien threat, and no matter how dark the night seemed, they would always rise to face the dawn, the heart of the storm. The dawn broke over the remnants of New York City, casting long shadows through the streets still littered with debris and memories of the past battles. Sarah stood on the rooftop of a battered building, scanning the horizon. The city had become a war zone, but it was her home, and she would do anything to protect it. With their previous victory still fresh in their minds, the humans prepared for the next phase of their plan. Captain Hughes had called for a meeting at the community center, and anticipation filled the air. Each person brought their own experiences, strategies, and fears, weaving together a fabric of resilience and determination. As they gathered, Hughes addressed them with a firm voice. "We've managed to push the Kalteri back, but we cannot become complacent. They will come for us again, and we need to be ready. Today, we will gather as much information as possible about their command structure. If we can disrupt their leadership, we can weaken their forces." Sarah felt a spark of excitement. "We need to infiltrate their main base and gather intel. If we can take out their leaders, it will throw them into chaos." Hughes nodded. "Exactly. We need a small, agile team to slip through their defenses and gather vital information. Sarah, I want you to lead this mission." She felt a mix of pride and fear. This was a huge responsibility, but she also knew her team had been through so much together. "I won't let you down," she promised. The team assembled quickly, equipped with makeshift armor and weapons. Sarah felt the weight of her leadership role settle on her shoulders, but she pushed the doubt aside. They had faced danger before, and this time would be no different. As they navigated through the ruins of the city, Sarah led the group toward the Kalteri Command Center, which was located in an abandoned skyscraper that towered over the surrounding buildings. The closer they got, the more she could feel the tension rising within her team. "Stay close and keep your voices down," Sarah instructed. They approached the base cautiously, using the cover of nearby structures to conceal their movements. Upon reaching the base, they quickly noticed the increased presence of Kalteri soldiers. "There are more of them than I expected," one of her team members whispered, his eyes wide with concern. "Stick to the shadows and stay low," Sarah urged. They crept closer to the building, searching for a way inside. A side entrance stood ajar, likely overlooked by the guards. With a shared nod, they slipped inside, hearts pounding in their chests. Once inside, they found themselves in a dimly lit corridor. The faint hum of machinery echoed around them, but the air was tense and still. "We need to find the control room," Sarah whispered. "That's where we can access their data." As they made their way down the hallway, they encountered several Kalteri soldiers. Sarah held her breath, motioning for her team to remain silent. They watched as the soldiers passed, the alien warriors chatting in their guttural language, oblivious to the humans lurking nearby. Finally, they'd reached a large door marked with strange symbols. "This has to be it," Sarah said, her pulse racing. She pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear anything on the other side. A low hum suggested machinery was active. "Let's go," she said, and with a gentle push, they slipped inside. The room was filled with blinking lights, screens displaying information in a language they didn't understand. "Start searching for anything useful," Sarah instructed. The team dispersed, each member scanning the screens, looking for weaknesses in the Kalteri's plans. As Sarah examined one of the consoles, a map of the city appeared on the screen, with markers indicating Kalteri troop movements and supply lines. "This is it," she exclaimed, her heart racing. "We can use this information to disrupt their operations." Suddenly, an alarm blared, piercing through the silence. Red lights began to flash, and Sarah's stomach dropped. "We've been detected. We need to get out of here. Now." "Where do we go?" one of her teammates shouted, panic rising in his voice. "Back the way we came. Move," Sarah commanded, leading them out of the room. They dashed through the corridors, but Kalteri soldiers were already converging on their location. "Split up," Hughes shouted. "We'll meet at the rendezvous point." Sarah's heart raced as she ran in the opposite direction, adrenaline propelling her forward. She could hear the sounds of battle erupting behind her, the clash of metal, and the crackle of energy weapons. Navigating through the maze of hallways, she found herself in a maintenance area filled with pipes and machinery. She ducked behind a large container, her breath coming in quick gasps. She knew she had to keep moving, but fear threatened to paralyze her. Peeking around the container, she spotted a side exit. It was a long shot, but it was worth the risk. Sarah sprinted towards it, her heart pounding in her ears. Just as she reached for the door handle, a Kalteri soldier appeared, blocking her path. "Human," it hissed, raising its weapon. With reflexes honed by countless battles, Sarah dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. She grabbed a nearby pipe, swinging it with all her might. The makeshift weapon connected with the Kalteri's helmet, and the alien crumpled to the ground. Without looking back, Sarah burst through the exit and into the daylight. The chaos of the battle raged on outside, but she couldn't stop now. She needed to find her team. Spotting Hughes and several of her teammates nearby, she ran towards them, her heart swelling with relief. "I got the intel. Let's get out of here," she shouted, leading them back into the fray. As they fought their way through the Kalteri forces, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. They were outnumbered, but she had the information they needed to turn the tide. After what felt like an eternity, they finally made it back to the rendezvous point, panting and battered. "You did it, Sarah," Hughes exclaimed, clapping her on the shoulder. "We can use this intel to launch a counteroffensive. You saved us." As the group caught their breath and prepared for the next phase, Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope. They had faced the Kalteri head-on, and despite the odds, they had survived. The heart of the storm still raged around them, but they were no longer afraid. Together, they would stand strong against the darkness, fighting for their home and their future. And as the sun set over the city, they prepared for the ultimate battle against the Kalteri invaders. The dawn of a new day was coming, and they would rise to meet it. The final stand. The night was heavy with anticipation as the remnants of humanity gathered in the heart of New York City. Makeshift barricades lined the streets, and the distant sounds of Kalteri forces preparing for an assault echoed ominously. Sarah stood among her comrades, her heart pounding as she recalled that harrowing mission that had brought them vital intelligence. "Tonight is the night we take back our city," Captain Hughes declared, his voice steady despite the danger that loomed ahead. He stood on a crate, surveying the crowd of determined faces. "We have the Kalteri command structure mapped out. We know where their weaknesses lie, and we will use that to our advantage. This is our chance to end their reign of terror." Cheers erupted from the crowd, filling the air with a sense of solidarity and purpose. Sarah felt a surge of courage swell within her. She had led her team through the Kalteri base and returned with the knowledge they desperately needed. Now, they would turn the tide of battle. As darkness enveloped the city, they prepared for the final stand. Each member of the group was assigned specific roles based on the intelligence they had gathered. They would split into teams, each aiming to target critical points within the Kalteri command center. Sarah gathered her team once more, their expressions a mix of anxiety and determination. "We're going to breach their defenses and disable their communications. If we can cut them off from their reinforcements, we can make this work," she explained, her voice firm. "We trust you, Sarah," one of her teammates said, offering a reassuring nod. With a plan in place, the teams moved out into the night. As they approached the Kalteri base, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The once bustling streets of New York lay silent, save for the faint sounds of their breathing and the distant rumble of Kalteri vehicles. Stealth was key. They slipped through the shadows, using the buildings for cover as they neared their target. The Kalteri command center loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and alien technology. "On my signal, we go," Sarah whispered, gripping her weapon tightly. Her heart raced as she counted down silently in her mind. At last, she raised her hand. "Now." They surged forward, bursting into the open, a mix of human ingenuity and raw determination driving them onward. Kalteri guards were taken by surprise as Sarah and her team launched their assault, moving swiftly and decisively. "Cover me," Sarah yelled as she darted towards the entrance, dodging blasts from the alien soldiers. Her team provided suppressive fire, keeping the Kalteri at bay while she reached the door. With a swift kick, she forced it open and dashed inside, her heart racing. The interior was filled with strange machinery and flickering lights, the air thick with tension. Sarah's eyes darted around, looking for the control room. "Split up. We'll cover more ground," she ordered. The team dispersed, each member ready to face whatever awaited them. As Sarah moved deeper into the base, she could hear the chaos of battle raging outside. The Kalteri were regrouping, and she had to act fast. She soon found a door marked with a symbol that resembled the one from her earlier mission. "This has to be it," she muttered, pushing the door open. Inside, rows of screens displayed troop movements, supply lines, and strategies. She quickly accessed the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. Come on," she urged, desperately trying to extract critical information. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a group of Kalteri soldiers entered, their eyes wide with fury. "Human," one of them shouted, raising its weapon. "Get down," Sarah yelled as she ducked behind the console, narrowly avoiding a blast. She could hear the sound of her team fighting outside, but she knew she had to hold her ground. Grabbing a nearby metal rod, she stood and swung at the nearest soldier, catching it off guard. The alien stumbled back, but more were rushing in. The odds were not in her favor. "Sarah, we need to get out of here," one of her teammates shouted from the doorway, firing back at the approaching Kalteri. "I'm almost done," she called, her focus unwavering. With a final keystroke, she downloaded the crucial information onto a data chip. "Let's go," she yelled, racing toward her teammate. They fought their way back through the hallways, dodging blasts and ducking behind cover. As they emerged from the building, the night sky erupted in chaos. Kalteri ships hovered overhead, their searchlights scanning the area. Sarah's team regrouped, catching their breath and assessing their next move.